The formula that NCAA for 120 years has finally reached to a conclusion. I am here with Dylan, my frequent collaborator. Dylan, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
For sure, man. Dylan, college sports has changed, has officially changed forever. The
Yep.
federal judge has approved terms of 2.8 billion antitrust settlement. And boy, oh boy, in the first year, listen to this, in the first year, each school can share up to about 20.5 million with their student athletes. I will say this, I have mixed feelings about this. I mean, I've been having this for quite a while. I am all for players getting paid. However, and I repeat, however, when it comes to transfer portal, I feel that they could transfer just once, but you have certain players that they jump from one program to another, to another, to another, because of they're looking for what's best for them in terms of money situation, as well as you have some players who are not comfortable how they're being utilized in the system. There's that issue, but the part that saddens me a little bit, and I'm curious and concerned on the future in terms of small schools. So like the days of Steph Curry at Davidson, or even Ball State, that 1990 Ball State team that went on this magical run in the tournament. Butler in 2010, when they made that run to the national title game, which they lost to Duke. That concerns me. That part of college sports going forward concerns me because a lot of these small schools, they're not going to have that amount of money to offer a certain player compared to like big time schools.
Yeah.
So I'm happy in one sense, but at the same time, NCAA, they can't have it both ways. They shot themselves in the foot with this decision. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some future lawsuits. It could be from NCAA or from players or from anybody. I feel that there are going to be more lawsuits
Yeah.
going forward from either or. So, what is your situation? What is your reaction when you receive this news a few days
Yeah.
ago
You
of
know,
the
it's tough.
NCAA House settlement?
It's tough because it gives schools more control. It definitely does because they have essentially in plain English, it basically means schools have a salary cap. So it gives schools more control as to how they want to how they want to use the money they have. If they want to spend it more on a football player or basketball or whatever, they have more control and they're able to kind of go more all in on the guys that they want to sign. So that I think that helps. But what you brought up about the small schools thing, there's going to be a lot of situations where a small school is not going to compete with an Alabama or a Duke in basketball for a certain player. So the competitive equity, I think, is going to be a little bit more messed up because of this, because the small schools don't already have a lot of stuff to get anyway. So they're not going to have like the money that they have, they're not going to really be able to use the way that they necessarily envision because they have these big schools that want all these players. So it's kind of a two-sided thing, right? You get the more control aspect of it from the schools, but then you also get, oh, like a Davidson's not going to get a top tier basketball player because they're probably going to sign with a Florida or a Duke or a school that can give them the money and the exposure that they want. So it kind of makes things tough. But I do think that in this era of college sports, it's very important to have because with the NIL stuff and the transfer portal, it's important that schools can kind of have that control over getting certain players and making sure that they can, if they want to get a guy, they need to be able to say, okay, we want this guy, we want to pay him. That I I don't know. It is kind of tough, but I think the control thing is a big part of it.
It's going to be very concerning, but also interesting how
Yeah.
things will play out in the future because there's even concerns about how is this going to impact the Olympics, for example, as well. That's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah.
And today I made a video about Van Allen Lupin, who was a part of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now he's joining his fourth team in his entering his senior year. He went from Notre Dame to Vanderbilt Tar Heels and not to NC State, which is a big rival to the Tar Heels. So I feel that with these student athletes, yes, they're getting paid, but there's also that the lack of loyalty, I should say, or I should say the lack of being stable. So, because if they're giving you this impression that they're jumping from one program to another, if you're the NBA scouts, if you're the GM, if you're the team president in the NBA, you got to pay attention to these things because you want to invest in a player that wants to be all in with the team and cares about winning more than, putting dollar in their pocket, which again, I'm not for anybody that wants to get paid, but at the same time, you want to invest in someone that wants to win, that wants to win it so bad.
Mhm.
And in sports, not every athlete has that. You have so many gifted athletes that they don't care enough about winning compared to like us fans. And then you have some athletes that they're not as good, but they care about winning. So it's just, we've seen this time and time again, but now we're in the era where players are getting paid and you can't say nothing to them because
Yeah.
that's another thing. They're baiting athletes way too much. You can't hold them accountable. For example, in college baseball, and I'm sticking to college sports in this aspect. College baseball, I love the sport, so many great programs, but one of the things that is distasteful about college baseball is that these athletes, they have no respect for the game. The bat flips have gone way through the roof. I like bat flips to a certain extent, and there's certain parts of bat flips that it's necessary, but I feel that coaches are basically puppets nowadays. They can't discipline a player because the minute that they discipline them, they'll get fired, or the player was like, "Goodbye, I'm going somewhere else." So that's the concerning part to
Yeah.
me.
And
And the
also
more money
too,
you offer them, the
yeah.
more they want to get baby, the more they complain. So it's just out of hand.
My two biggest concerns, I think, overall with this whole thing is that for the top athletes, I think it helps because, especially the ones that want to go pro, it allows them to kind of train for being a pro athlete before they get to the pros. And I think that's going to be a very beneficial thing. On the flip side of that, though, you kind of take out the student part of being a student athlete because now, like you said, it's all about the money and where they can get the most money and the biggest check, and they're not really putting emphasis on really being a part of that school. They're kind of just there because of the NIL opportunities and all that. And then it also makes it for a lot of the play, like there's such a small percentage of college athletes that go pro, and it makes for those players who aren't going pro, it's going to affect them it's going to affect them because they aren't really focusing on the education. They probably have to get an agent, and it's going to affect them because if they don't go pro, they're putting all this effort into being a pro athlete in college without really getting the full effect of it. So it kind of, I think it helps the top athletes, but it affects negatively the athletes who probably are either a borderline player or aren't going pro. So it's kind of, it I think creates a lot of, it creates problems, but I think it has its benefits for like the top tier guys.
I feel that when it comes to a contract situation, they have to be a little bit more firm in the
Yeah.
sense that okay, if you're gonna do transfer portal, you can only do it one time, and there's gonna be certain guidelines that gotta go into this. Like you just can't bend the knee and bend over and give everything to the players. No, there has to be um they got to read the fine print on both sides of the party. And like I said, it's the adults. This is the adults' fault. They let this happen. They weren't as aggressive and disciplined when it came to this situation. And we're only seeing the beginning of this saga, I should say. But oh boy, I just hope that when March Madness comes around next year, even though we saw a few games that came very close in terms of teams making that extra push to the following round. And the best example that I could give right now is Colorado State versus Maryland. Colorado
Yep.
State came very close of pulling an upset. So I really hope that that aspect at least continues with one or two teams. Like I want to see that going forward. So, but the upside about March Madness is that it's just one game. If it's a playoff series like the NBA, I will have my concerns. But it's one game and anything can happen. And I hope that they don't expand. And that's another thing that I fear. I feel that the NCAA tournament March Madness is going to expand, and they shouldn't. They should just
No,
keep it
they
the way
should
it
keep it
is.
at 64. The one thing I will say though is I think you're still going to get that because a lot of players will go to a school like Colorado State as a starter school so they can kind of establish themselves a bit. So I think you're still going to get games like that in March just because of the caliber, if you get a player at Colorado State who play really well in the tournament, he's going to move on to a bigger school. So it's like a starter school and you never know, you like the a superstar may be on a starter school that ends up helping the team go far. So you never really know. But yeah, I'm very excited to see how the direction that college sports go now that schools have a salary cap. I'm very interested to see how players use the transfer portal because that's going to be key, I think, in these next coming months and seasons coming up.